Welcome everybody to this webinar, Best Practices in Local Public MWBE and SBE Programs. My name is Amy Chitayat, and I'm the Senior Consultant for the Insight Center for Community Economic Development and the moderator for this webinar. Also with us is Henry A.J. Ramos, Insight's President and CEO, and Tim Lorenz, Insight's Senior Consultant, as well as he's the mastermind behind the research that much of this webinar is based upon. We are also joined in our offices in Oakland, California today by Insight's Jim Torrens and Laverne Gardner, who will be providing technical support and receiving your comments and questions. In case you aren't familiar with us, the Insight Center is a national consulting, research, advocacy, and legal nonprofit dedicated to building economic health in vulnerable communities. We're pleased to report that about 160 participants have signed up for the webinar, with a relatively even breakdown of audience members from city, county, and state agencies, and additional participation from advocates and other organizations. Thank you all for attending. We're delighted to be offering today's webinar in collaboration with 4 practitioner organizations. From Houston, we have with us Marsha E. Murray, who is the Assistant Director of the Office of Business Opportunity. From King County, Washington, where Seattle is home, we have with us Sandy Hanks, the Manager of Small Business Programs. And from Hennepin County, Minnesota, where Minneapolis is home, we have with us Cynthia Wyrens, the Contract Compliance Administrator for Purchasing and Contracting Services. And finally, from the state of Maryland, we have with us Allison Tavik, the Director of Communications of Maryland's Governor's Office of Minority Affairs. In case you haven't attended one of our webinars before, here are some features of your control panel. To hide the control panel, click on the arrow at the upper left. To bring it back, click on the arrow again. You can listen to this webinar by phone or by streaming audio. To choose which audio mode you prefer, click on one of the 2 toggle buttons in the audio pane. You are in listen-only mode, but we do want your questions and comments. Please type them into the questions pane as they occur to you. We will organize them and read them into our presenters to address during the question and answer period after her presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and links to the webinar slideshow and recording will be emailed to you after the session. They will also be posted to Insight's Webinar Archives page. A link to that page will be included in the email. Please also note that a brief survey will pop up after the webinar. I'd like to ask you to please spend a minute to complete it. Now, Henry A.J. Ramos, Insight's President and CEO, will introduce the topic at hand.
Amy, thank you so much, and thank you to all of you on the line for joining us. I'm thrilled to have such a robust participant list and such an impressive group of expert panelists to help facilitate this important exchange. Amy's asked me to set some context for the discussion, but before I do, I particularly want to acknowledge a few individuals, including Amy, for their help in setting this up for all of us and our collective benefit. Marsha Murray, in particular, who's on the line as one of our expert presenters, has been a great partner as a thought leader and practitioner in helping us understand the import of this work and also to lift up and craft this exchange. Her very, very valued partner, Carlisha Wright, who runs the office that Marsha works in, has also been a great partner and has recently co-authored with us an important op-ed on these topics that we hope to circulate to all of you as something that we can follow up with after our conversation. Tim Lorenz, who was mentioned earlier, is really the center of gravity for the Insight Center's engagement in this work for some time now, and was the mastermind behind the report that we hope to focus on today. So I really want to applaud Tim's efforts to keep this issue burning and on the front page for all of us. And Amy Chitayat, who's our moderator, obviously has played a big role in helping us think through how to organize this conversation and how to put it in motion in a way that I hope will be very practical and useful for all of our participants. So with that, I'd like to just set some context, basically to paraphrase some of the observations or findings that result from this important latest report from the Insight Center on the issues. And then I'll turn it back over to Amy to help us introduce and engage our expert panelists and then the rest of you for conversation. I think as most of you know, and what probably drives you to the conversation, is that in the normal course of business, local governments purchase literally tens of billions of dollars in goods and services each year. City and county minority and women-owned business enterprise, or MWBE programs, help diverse small business owners get an equitable share of those dollars. These programs implement government procurement policies that encourage and even require contracting with minority and women owners when they are underrepresented in contracting awards. Similarly, small business enterprise, or SBE programs, give a running start to the kinds of smaller businesses that diverse business principals typically own, which is why we are including them in the webinar. There are many common practices for these programs, such as giving preference points to MWBEs or SBEs for their contract bid, requiring contractors or suppliers to make a good faith effort to utilize diverse small business owners as subcontractors, encouraging diverse owners to bid on contracts through outreach and networking, and building the capacity of small businesses to participate in these programs effectively. Longstanding racial and gender discrimination has led to disadvantages in business startup and growth, including inadequate access to business networks, role models, training, assets, credit, and resources. MWBE programs help to level the playing field in the context of that history. With regard to small businesses, some studies estimate that small businesses employ as much as 70% of all workers nationally in our nation, but small businesses increasingly struggle to compete, as we know, with multinational corporations headquartered far away from where they sit. By distributing income and assets more evenly throughout communities in a given region, inclusive business programs are one of the most proactive ways to address economic and racial inequality and grow the economy. We need to build on the success of these public programs by expanding them into regions that either have not supported them historically or that have but have opted out in recent years, and we need to make the program quality consistent across the board. We are all ultimately better off, I'm sure all would agree on this call, when we encourage every individual and group to succeed in private enterprise, which we all acknowledge is the bedrock of our productive capacity as a nation. This webinar came out of an Insight Center study entitled Economic Development in Diverse Communities, Inclusive Business Procurement in Cities and Towns. The link to this study is on the webinar invitation. The study highlights trends and best practices in the field and reveals a dynamic reach, evolution, and impact of these programs toward regional economic vitality. The work of MWBE and SBE programs are an important and often untold story, and the Insight Center is interested in continuing to support and encourage more and better inclusive business programs through future events and reports of this type. So with that, and gratitude to Amy Chitayat again for her leadership in bringing us together, I will turn it back to Amy to help us with the conversation we hope to have with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. So now it's time to talk a little bit about what we're going to be covering during the webinar. The goals of the webinar are to educate existing city and county program leaders about strategies to increase effectiveness and to make the case for highlighting program effectiveness through economic impact reports. Now, I know that some of you on the call are not existing city and county program leaders, but I think that many of the lessons can be useful for other agencies participating in the webinar, including state, community colleges, transit agencies, and the like. So during the webinar, first we will go over the study findings that Henry mentioned, and then learn about best practices from leaders of 3 outstanding city and county MWBE and SBE programs. Many other programs on the call have exceptional programs, and I feel bad that we can't highlight you all. But just know that we know that you're doing a good job out there. We will end the webinar by discussing the potential value of economic impact reports. Showing economic impact, such as the number of local jobs added, for example, has tremendous potential to solidify support and underscore the significance of your program. We will highlight the state of Maryland as an example, actually the only agency study that prepares such economic impact reports. So we're dividing the work into MWBE programs and SWBE programs, and in particular with MWBE programs, we're going to be focusing on race-conscious and race-neutral programs. So let me say a little bit about what they are. Race-conscious programs implement policies that show direct preference for minority and women-owned businesses, such as in requiring prime contractors to use MWBE subcontractors where possible. That's just one example of a direct preference, whereas race-neutral programs use more indirect methods of supporting MWBE participation, such as driving opportunities towards MWBEs. While most cities and counties can choose to offer race-conscious or race-neutral programs, there are 6 states that have laws that prohibit race-conscious programs, and that's happened really in the past 20 years or so. Arizona, California, Michigan, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Washington. And in those states, the cities and counties are more limited in what they can do. But some have found ways to have great impact through their race-neutral programs, sometimes even greater than their race-conscious counterparts. And some best practices from race-neutral programs can be used by race-conscious ones. On the other end of the spectrum, though, North Carolina requires jurisdictions, including cities, school districts, and certain other jurisdictions, to have a race-conscious MWBE policy. And Massachusetts does this in a more limited way, so we think these are very interesting. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about the report itself that this webinar is based upon. The study examined a sample of 20 large cities and 20 large counties in 2013, and more than a third of those were in race-neutral states. We included the nation's largest 17 metropolitan centers, and we selected the remaining cities and counties with a preference for those with the largest population, the greatest racial and ethnic diversity, and the geographic representation from across the United States. While these cities and counties were not selected randomly, we believe that they make up about half of all the jurisdictions of a similar size or greater, and we believe they're fairly representative of large, diverse cities and counties in the country. So what we found in the study is that overall, nearly 60% of jurisdictions have MWBE programs, which is quite significant, and some of them are quite substantial. For example, New York purchases over $500 million through its MWBE program, which can rival some of the size of some counties and even states. More cities and counties are implementing programs, about 3 out of every 4. The number of MWBE programs is maintaining on the whole over the past years from 2008 to 2013. Only 2 jurisdictions discontinued their programs, Broward County and Phoenix, Arizona, replacing them with SBE programs, but Charlotte, North Carolina added an MWBE program. On the SBE side, 55% of jurisdictions offer an SBE program, and that could be in addition to their MWBE programs. And SBE programs were added by 18% of the jurisdictions studied. In total, 90% offer some type of program, whether it's SBE, MWBE, or both. It's very interesting. The only jurisdictions in the study that offer neither SBE nor MWBE program were suburban, and we don't really know why that's the case, but that was an interesting finding. Many jurisdictions added significant components to their MWBE and SBE programs. For example, Philadelphia added an annual disparity study and co-located their MWBE office with the Commerce Department. So disparity studies are very important. They've altered the shape of many MWBE programs. So in 3 examples, Charlotte, North Carolina, San Antonio, Texas, and Houston, MWBE programs were dropped or partially dropped and then reinstated based on the findings of disparity studies and MWBE utilization figures. These studies help to determine whether the procurement environment is fair and equitable by comparing the number of ready and willing firms in particular industries with their public contract awards and showing the results by race and gender. In some cases, disparity studies will identify industry sectors that are so underrepresented by minorities or women that MWBE programs are required to address the imbalance. So that's how disparity studies work. Any questions so far? Okay. Feel free to type questions in all along as you're listening. So we're going to now move on to start to talk with the practitioners, focusing first on race-conscious MWBE programs. A quick reminder that if you type in your questions at any point in the presentations, we'll be reading those questions back right after each presentation. And I'll open for each practitioner with a few quick comments. So almost all race-conscious MWBE programs use what's called subcontracting goals, which require prime contractors and suppliers to make a good faith effort to locate MWBE firms and use them as subcontractors. This is an important and effective policy, and of perhaps equal impact to subcontracting goals is encouraging MWBEs to be primes. This is particularly true when projects tend to be smaller, because there are fewer dollars for subcontracts. There are many good examples of this, with MWBE capacity building being a very common one. SBE set-asides is a real best practice in this area, and we will describe that a little bit more later. I think it's an interesting one. I'd like to now introduce Marcia E. Murray, the Assistant Director of the Office of Business Opportunity in Houston. The Office of Business Opportunity does an exceptional job of encouraging MWBEs to become primes and stands out for its methods of supporting and enforcing compliance of all city departments. Marcia?
Thank you, Amy. I just want to take this opportunity to just quickly thank the Insight Center for actually inviting us to participate in this study and to participate in this webinar. We're really excited about this. The City of Houston has had a MWBE program for the last 30 years with the express purpose of stimulating the growth of local MBEs and WBEs through meaningful participation in all phases of city contracting, which means that the city is invested in making sure that MBEs and WBEs perform at a prime level in city contracting as well as subcontracting level and also in joint ventureship. The city has committed to putting subcontracting goals on our goal-oriented contracts. And there's a dollar threshold for most of our contracts. For construction contracts that exceed $1 million, we put goals on them. For professional services contracts, we don't have goals. Purchasing contracts, the threshold is $100,000. And so primes are required to make good faith efforts to meet subcontracting goals on each of the goal-oriented contracts. The city has, the program, as I mentioned, has been in effect for 30 years, and so there have been changes along the way, but most significantly, as mentioned by Amy earlier, the city was sued in 1996 by a small business owner who basically alleged that, in fact, women had reached parity in the Houston marketplace in construction services, and there was no longer a need to have women goals on construction contracts. As a part of a settlement in that case in 2009, the City of Houston removed women goals from construction contracts and replaced them with small business enterprise goals, pending a disparity study. A disparity study was done, and a report was released in 2012, which supported the use of both MBE and WBE goals on construction contracts in the city. The study definitively found that there was statistical and anecdotal evidence of business discrimination against minorities and women in the city's relevant market area. So as of last year, last July 2013, the City of Houston reintegrated women goals back into its construction contracts and actually updated the goals that the city aspires to meet in making sure that the city spends a certain percentage of its procurement dollars with certified firms. So currently the city aspires to spend at least 34% of the construction dollars with certified firms, 24% with in professional services, and 11% in purchasing. We do make sure that on individual contracts that there are contract-specific goals that are reflective of the availability in the marketplace for each contract type. Next slide. Next slide, please. So the City of Houston decided that it made sense to actually have the program administered by one city department. And that city department is the Office of Business Opportunity. It was formerly known as the Affirmative Action and Contract Compliance Division, but it evolved over the last few years to, as of 2011, to be called the Office of Business Opportunity, to actually expand our services to actually provide services for all small businesses in addition to certified firms. The department is charged with certifying for our local program as well as the U.S. Department of Transportation. We also perform contract compliance functions. We are responsible for ensuring that on those contracts where there are MWSBE goals, that these primes are actually meeting the goals. And where there are contracts in which there are prevailing wage issues or equal employment issues, we're responsible for compliance on those as well. We do provide that at times there are disputes that arise between prime contractors and the certified firms who are performing as subs towards the goals on contracts. So we do provide mediation services to actually resolve some of those issues. Another key component of our program is to provide business development and technical assistance to all small businesses, and I'll actually speak a little bit more about that later. We also perform an oversight function as it regards other city departments who are really largely the contracting departments. They are charged by local ordinance with supporting the goal and the mission of the program. They do that through various means by making sure that contracts are reasonably sized, by forecasting their procurement opportunities, and also assisting in performing outreach to firms so that they know the services that are actually provided by the city to support them. The departments are also charged with ensuring that the necessary progress is being made on an annual basis to achieve the goals that the city has set for the program. We also, the Office of Business Opportunity, also makes sure that we provide regular training through what we call the Procurement Training Institute to City Department procurement staff to make sure that they understand how to best ensure the success of the program and ensure compliance with the program rules. In addition to our program that focuses on certified firms, we also have a local preference program that is race and gender neutral as well as size, and which was implemented in 2011 in order to promote economic opportunity for local businesses and local job creation. And that program allows, on a prime level, for their preference to be given to a business that's determined to be hired Houston first. So the Office of Business Opportunity is actually charged with not certifying, it doesn't rise to levels of certification, but designating companies as Hire Houston First to be able to participate in that program. So as long as they're headquartered in the local area or have at least 20% of their workforce and a substantial part of their operations here, then they're eligible to be Hire Houston First. Next slide, please. So the City of Houston focuses as it regards the MWSBE program on making sure that we educate our businesses, we help to develop them, we connect them to opportunities, and that they eventually grow. And we do that through a variety of ways. We are focused on providing capacity building programs, business development assistance. We do set up network and opportunities for our businesses to make sure that they are actually creating relationships with primes as well as relationships with buyers in the different city departments, that they understand what opportunities are out there and can take advantage of them. We also partner with a local financial institution, Axion, Texas, to actually provide, they actually come to our office on a once per week to meet with businesses and to provide microloans for those businesses, as well as we have a counselor from SCORE who comes once per week to our office as well and sits down and provides business advice to our local firms. We have over the last couple of years focused on creating a capacity building bond readiness program. That started a couple of years ago. We initially partnered with the Department of Transportation to provide that. Last year we actually partnered with some local organizations to provide that. And that's an area that we intend to continue to grow because the disparity study found that access to bonding and working capital are chief barriers to the growth and success of small businesses. So we're certainly continuing to be invested in providing those services. We also have on site a business development manager who meets with our certified firm and provides a one-on-one business assessment, particularly our recently certified firms who are unsure how to navigate the city's procurement process. We do provide one-on-one and coaching assistance for those firms. We have an annual business plan competition in an effort to further develop our businesses, particularly ones that are really brand new, that are less than a year old, to provide education and training workshops for them as well. Next slide, please. So a huge part of our program is making sure that there is transparency, that all the stakeholders, that the community understand the progress, that can see clearly the progress that's being made towards achieving the goals that the city has set. So we have, and this is actually required by our local ordinance as well, we publish a quarterly scorecard of how city departments, the progress they're making towards achieving goals. And it basically shows what their spend has been, how much has actually been spent with certified firms. It's broken down by, it shows the information by gender, by certification type, by ethnicity, and that scorecard is available on our website for all to see. We also have invested in a contract monitoring system that supports our entire program and basically serves as the repository for the data that informs the reporting that we do for the scorecard. One of our stakeholders requested that they be able to look at any given moment, look at how the progress a prime is making to achieving contract-specific goals, the subcontracting goals, and subcontracting goals, and subcontracting goals, and subcontracting goals, and subcontracting. Can you hear me?
Sorry about that. I don't know what that was, but whoever the problem was just fixed it.
Okay. Okay. So we created we created a feature on our website that's accessible by the public. They can basically search for open contracts and see the progress that is being actually made by the prime contractor to meet the goal that's set on a specific contract. We routinely and consistently engage with our stakeholders and our city council about the progress of the program, about any significant changes that are being made. We sit down and we have conversations and focus groups to discuss changes that are actually happening that we intend to make to the program. Such as recently we decided for this fiscal year that we were going to require on construction contracts that bidders provide their participation plans with their bids in order to be responsive, which is a significant change for us. And we sat down with various stakeholders to talk about the impact of that and to fine-tune the process. So it has been integral to the success of the program to have everyone invested and discussing what's happening within the program. We provide regular workshops for city council districts to talk about our services and about our certification process to encourage more businesses to become certified, and we routinely sit down with businesses to really talk about any challenges that they're having or concerns that they may have about the program. So it's a constant engagement of the community that we do. Next slide, please. And as far as the future of the program, we're continuously striving to improve the program and to make sure that our businesses that are successful. We, as the last disparity study that I mentioned that was published in 2012, recommended that the city explore looking at creating some kind of small business target market program and to encourage prime level participation by small businesses. And the city is currently looking into implementing that. We will need some legislative support for that to happen, but that is something that the city is seriously looking at. We're updating our policies and procedures to make sure that they're clear as possible and we are as transparent as possible, and that the policies and procedures actually represent, the evolution of the program. We are engaged in making sure that we increase participation by certified firms. We are focused on making sure that we completely reintegrate women business enterprises back into construction services contracts. We certainly lost, a few during the period of time that we had to remove them from the program. The study showed that there was actually a 50% drop in participation after we were mandated to remove them from the program. So we want to certainly have them reintegrated back in fully. We are continuing to look at different gaps in our, to see where there's an underrepresentation of certified firms in certain types of contracts to address those as well. And as I mentioned earlier, capacity building programs is something that we're certainly continuing to focus on, particularly in the construction area where we understand that there's a significant need in this marketplace. And of course, we continue to periodically review the program to make sure that it's still needed in order to meet the requirements of strict construction constitutional scrutiny, we periodically ensure that there continues to be evidence of discrimination in the marketplace that supports the continuation of the program. Next slide, please. And the next slide, what I provided, and you can certainly look at it at your leisure, is just how the progress that the city has made over the last 3 fiscal years in meeting its goals. And for the most part, we have certainly met our goals in making sure there's a certain percentage of spend with certified firms. And I will take any questions.
Thank you, Marcia. That was great. We have a question from Brian Williams from Miami-Dade School Board. And the question is, for Houston, what is the rationale for no goals on professional services contracts, as these are typically contracts that have low participation of SBEs and MWBEs?
So I'm sorry if I misconveyed information, but we do have goals on professional services contracts. We have goals of 24%. That's our citywide goal on professional services contracts. There's no dollar threshold like there is for construction contracts and purchases, but we do have goals.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marcia. We're going to move on, but there'll be time for additional questions later for Marcia. And we're going to start with talking about race-neutral programs. So first, a few words. In states that prohibit direct policies like subcontracting goals, counties and cities have evolved to develop both voluntary and indirect policies that support opportunities for historically disadvantaged communities. While no one policy is as strong as a race-conscious policy, using a range of race-neutral strategies, making the extra effort to implement each effectively can drive outcomes even more than a single race-conscious policy. That's one reason why these strategies are interesting in and of themselves, even for race-conscious programs. Some examples of these strategies are facilitating relationships between MWBEs and purchasing agencies, obtaining leadership's commitment to diversity, which is always key, and publicly reporting procurement results to incentivize department heads. I'm going to now introduce Sandy Hanks, the manager for King County Small Business Programs on the local, state, and federal levels. Ms. Hank also serves as the Federal Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Liaison Officer for King County. King County is an excellent example of a program with a broad range of race-neutral policies, including ones that embed voluntary MWBE goals into SBE programs. This strategy of embedding voluntary goals is very innovative, with just a handful of jurisdictions doing something similar, and has so much potential that we feel that a whole webinar could be devoted to it. King County is also implementing a series of practices that seek to dismantle structural racism in public procurement, which is another best practice that only a couple of dozen programs are doing. Sandy?
Well, good morning. And first, let me say thank you to Amy and Tim and the other subject matter experts at the Insight Center for allowing me to participate this morning in the webinar. I would like in my presentation to provide a bit of a background and context for the significant change that King County has experienced in recent years in really moving the needle in terms of our use of small businesses, minority, and women-owned businesses. We have always been a major business generator for businesses of all sizes in our region. We have an annual budget of about $5.3 billion. But about a year before we started our procurement reform efforts, we continually heard from vendors and contractors that it was difficult doing business with King County. Their criticism centered on the cumbersome and inefficient nature of many of our procurement processes, and there were some contractors who expressed that they would no longer bid on county projects. Moreover, some local business owners, especially small, minority, and women-owned businesses, so they found it difficult gaining access to our contracting opportunities. So right around 2010, the King County Executive launched a county-wide procurement reform initiative to respond to these widespread criticisms. Procurement reform, as it was called, was a component of an overall blueprint for reforming county government. This effort was designed to provide a more efficient and equitable environment for firms to do business with us. And it had a twofold focus. Firstly, contracting, reducing cycle time of our procurement processes and the costs associated with those. And secondly, to increase opportunities for small and disadvantaged firms. The reform embodied several goals within our strategic plan, including customer service excellence, strong financial stewardship, a vibrant economy, and equity and social justice. This effort started out as a two-year one with top-down support provided by an executive order. The executive order set forth specific objectives, and it included a committee structured for involving all of our county agencies in the reform action. After 2 years, the intent was to set the bar for procurement performance at a new level, measure the results, and expand on the improvements going forward. The reform was further guided by an executive-level steering committee and procurement reform work group with members from each county department. The work group included 2 teams, one for goods and services procurement and another for capital project procurement. And both teams met about every 2 weeks over a 2-year period to develop and track progress on the reform plan of action. There were also regular outreach efforts conducted with local business organizations and individual firms to gain their perspective about the reform itself. Next slide. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, the focus on procurement improvement was an essential part of a reform agenda for county government that began in early 2010. The reform aimed at changing the way King County does business as a whole, with a key focus on making it easier for smaller firms to do business with King County, creating more jobs in the private sector and strengthening our local communities. The initiative itself is a very good demonstration of how King County is integrating equity and social justice into our everyday delivery of our procurement services. Next slide. For example, recognizing the impact to our local and regional economy, the reform included new outreach activities and new contracting methods to increase opportunities for small, minority, and women-owned businesses. We underscored the value of regional collaboration by establishing a certification program for small contractors and suppliers. That effort in and of itself has created new partnerships with other government entities. The new regional certification service uses a single application and common standards to determine the eligibility of a firm to compete as a certified small business for public contracts with our other participating government partners. We've also invited other governments to join to further foster a regional commitment to small businesses. We've also initiated or implemented a small business accelerator program, and I'll speak more to that in a moment. We're also using new public works contracts to increase opportunities for small firms. Our reforms use existing and new types of contracts to increase opportunities for small contractors on public work projects. These contracts, or for these contracts, the reforms created and applied new requirements to ensure the participation of certified small businesses. An example is our on-call engineering and construction project. During the same period, King County awarded its first ever $4 million job order contract. Job order contracts are used to expedite the completion of multiple small-scale repair and construction projects, each with a value that is estimated at less than $350,000. And so by their very nature, they provide extensive subcontracting opportunities for small, minority, and women-owned businesses to participate in those projects. 1 year later, we issued a second job order contract. We also restructured our bid opportunities and applied incentives and other approaches to promote the use of small businesses. Next slide. A key accomplishment during the reforms was the launch of our new, still relatively new, Small Business Accelerator. It is a set-aside program for certain types of goods and services. So as part of our reform efforts in 2011, we designed the program to allow our certified small businesses to compete among themselves for designated contracts. In the past, King County had basically a second-tier program for smaller contractors. But we heard from many of those firms that they wanted the opportunity to compete as prime contractors in our award. The Small Business Accelerator is the mechanism that is helping us to meet that need. The King County Council passed an ordinance after we had introduced the legislation to create the Small Business Accelerator, and we were assisted by our King County Civil Rights Commission, who had been engaged with us in many of our conversations and discussions with business owners and other organizations in the marketplace. But most importantly, the King County Executive is continuing to hold all county department directors accountable for supporting small businesses as part of a greater vision to work together as one King County. Next slide. So the graph that I chose to use today to illustrate the significant change that truly was a result of the procurement reform effort that began in 2010 provides you with a snapshot of where we were, where King County was in terms of its use of small, minority, women-owned businesses and disadvantaged business enterprises on our federal side of the house. In 2009, you can see that we were really at kind of an even keel, not a lot of progress, a lot of upward progress in the use of those businesses. In 2010, by coordinating our internal discussions, really being focused on the root cause of our lack of participation prior to 2010, we were able to make significant gains from 2010 and even continuing beyond the increase that you see in 2011. Key pieces of that, again, top-down support from our executive, a coordinated response from our county departments, revisiting existing contracting types, and a willingness to take a look at new strategies and new tools to further engage our small businesses. So after years of being viewed within the business community as difficult to work with, King County is now leading the way in improving efficiency, our equity, our cycle time and cost savings, as well as increasing small business contracting opportunities. But most importantly, the improvements all align with our strategic plan goals of service excellence, economic growth, financial stewardship, and equity and social justice. So I'll take any questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Sandy. You really are doing an amazing job with so many comprehensive features to your program. The first question is coming, a similar question from Sharon Walker from DeKalb County, Georgia, and Teresa Kemper from Hillsborough County, Florida. And the questions are, what software do you use specifically on your public contract search feature and to show the prime contractor's progress on goals and awarded projects?
In terms of software, we do have, and I should add that our team, I work with an amazing group of folks who work daily to ensure that the goals and requirements that we set on contracts are adhered to by our contractors. We have an access database that is web-based, and we receive help from our contractors in doing a lot of that heavy lifting to input the data. We monitor that against data that we get from our state of Washington labor and industry to ensure that we've got a good check and a balance, and at the end of the day with the eye on ensuring that the participation that was committed is what we get. So in answer to the question, it is an access database that is web-enabled to allow the contractors to sign in using a user password.
Thank you. We're going to move on now to SBE programs. SBE programs are an effort to level the playing field for small businesses, which typically have a competitive disadvantage over larger corporations, even though they benefit local economic development. SBE programs don't have any requirements with regard to race or gender, but we've included them here in the webinar because they indirectly benefit MWBE owners who operate more small businesses than large ones. One effective and typical practice for SBE programs is to require prime contractors to subcontract a portion of their projects to SBEs. This is very similar to the strategy used by race-conscious MWBE programs. And one of the most powerful SBE tools are set-asides, and that's what we mentioned earlier. They're known as also as sheltered markets or reserves. SBE set-asides are policies that prohibit bids from larger corporations on projects below a certain dollar threshold. For example, in Atlanta, Georgia, the threshold is $2.5 million. As an alternative to or in addition to a threshold, some programs open up bidding from larger firms only if there are insufficient SBE bids. When SBE set-asides are put into effect at the same time as focused outreach and capacity building with MWBEs, the number of MWBE primes is likely to significantly increase. Up next is Cynthia Wyrens, the Contract Compliance Administrator for Purchasing and Contract Services in Hennepin County, Minnesota. Hennepin County stands out for its aggressive SBE goals and its active collaboration with other levels of government, nonprofits, and neighboring counties. Cynthia?
Thank you, Amy, Insight, and esteemed colleagues. Hennepin County has long encouraged the participation of women and minority-owned businesses in procurement. Over the years, the county's programs have evolved to include a combination of race and gender conscious and neutral initiatives to promote diversity and inclusion. However, the U.S. Supreme Court Crozon decision and subsequent rulings put programs like our minority and women business enterprise subcontracting goals at risk of legal challenge. In response to this, the county and the city of Minneapolis conducted a joint disparity study which found the county was not an active participant in discrimination, but had a compelling interest to remedy disparity in our marketplace. The county shut down its WMBE Goals program and established an SBE program to exhaust neutral options. Organizationally, we are currently situated as a unit of the Purchasing and Contract Services Division in the Budget and Finance Department. Next slide, please. SBE goals illustrated here apply to both direct contracts and subcontracts, although if the selected contractor commits to SBE participation in excess of the established goal, they are then held accountable to the approved commitment, and their performance is measured against what may be a considerably higher goal to attain. This practice helps to offset those who may come in under the released goal and are approved based on good faith efforts. Hennepin County reports results based on contract expenditures. In our experience, this differs dramatically from contract award values, which do not represent actual utilization. While construction results include both direct contract and subcontract participation, The results for non-construction do not include sub-tiers and thus are understated. SBE goals have been considered on non-construction opportunities, and when goals are set, the approval and monitoring process mirrors construction. In an effort to improve outcomes, architectural, engineering, and other related professional services opportunities now default to a 25% goal, and sub-tiers under professional services will be included in summary results in the future. Next slide, please. Any one of these strategies could be a webinar itself, not to mention others I've omitted entirely in the interest of time. County libraries offer an example of unbundling. The county currently unbundles maintenance and operational services for our 41 libraries geographically in such a way that allows SBEs with a workforce of 1 to 3 FTEs to compete and win bids, building their success and capacity over time. A number of these SBEs are minority-owned. Consultant service agreements are an example of an upcoming set-aside. The county maintains a list of pre-approved consultant services agreements to meet needs of our departments for professional services. While many targeted firms are awarded contracts under this program, we want to improve the utilization. So we've stepped it up by requiring direct selection of SBE firms within the CSAs for projects under $25,000 in a non-competitive set-aside. And for opportunities ranging from $25,000 to $100,000, 3 SBE firms must be solicited in a competitive set-aside, provided SBE firms are available within the required disciplines. Several examples of outreach and networking follow. The Small and Disadvantaged Business Opportunities Council's Government Procurement Fair is one example of an event we'd participate in jointly. At the 15th Annual SADBOC Fair held last month, Hennepin County joined more than 1,000 pre-registered small and disadvantaged firms, along with federal and local agencies, primes and commercial firms, and nonprofit organizations. This event is free to small and disadvantaged firms and offers business matchmaking, workshops, and much more. Hennepin County has a long-standing relationships with targeted community partners such as the National Association of Minority Contractors Upper Midwest. County staff regularly meets with NAMC and provides presentations on doing business, such as the county's best value procurement process, advising them on upcoming business opportunities, and receiving feedback. We have grown our certification pool over the years, and thus our ability to establish increased SBE participation goals through sourcing and solicitation by targeting firms with race and gender conscious certifications in our marketplace to include them on applicable opportunities. Additionally, we push out notification of opportunities to targeted community partners such as the Ethnic Chambers, Association of Women Contractors, and many other groups. We are able to target many outreach and communication efforts toward historically underutilized firms, even though we operate a neutral program. Next slide, please. At Hennepin County, we assign a 3-place code to all firms indicative of business structures such as publicly held, nonprofit, or government entity. Business size denoted by SBE certification status, and business ownership and control by race, ethnicity, and gender. Points of intake for the information to assign codes include at certification and business registration, on substitute W-9s, and subcontractor participation forms. In this way, we can track firms during all phases of the procurement process and steer our ship by determining where a disconnect is so we may better target initiatives. Next slide, please. Hennepin County provides assistance to businesses and municipalities through a variety of programs designed to assist businesses, promote economic development, create and retain jobs, and cultivate entrepreneurs. I will highlight two of these today. Several years ago, Hennepin County piloted the Economic Gardening Partnership Program. Participating core companies created over 90 jobs and are seeing double-digit revenue growth. Building on this success and recognizing the need for sustained growth, Hennepin County, together with 4 metro counties, established the Regional Economic Gardening Partnership and implemented the Edward Lowe Foundation's Economic Gardening Program to provide select growth companies with no-cost business research and enhancement. Participating companies must show potential for job creation and longer-term business growth. Another example is Open to Business. It is far too expensive for many cities to hire technical assistance experts to assist small businesses. But for a shared cost of $10,000 per city, it's an efficient use of resources. Hennepin County offered interested municipalities one-to-one matching funds if they launched or expanded a small business and entrepreneur technical assistance initiative called Open to Business. Through this partnership, the nonprofit Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers provides direct one-on-one technical assistance services at no fee to entrepreneurs and small businesses who live or work in participating cities. The range of services offered is listed here. To date, 13 municipalities in Hennepin County have joined this initiative. Open to Business has served more than 500 SBEs, including $2.7 million in direct facilitated financing to Hennepin County businesses, $7.8 million in leveraged capital, providing more than 3,500 hours of technical assistance, preserving or adding employment for 233 workers. In 2013 alone, 51% of Open to Business clients were women and 46% were minorities. Next slide, please. Our collaborative efforts range from a casual bridge built by representatives of 2 agencies, such as ours with the Procurement and Technical Assistance Center, to more complex relationships forged by memorandums of understanding and joint powers agreements. By finding common ground, we can break down barriers and improve outcomes for those we are here to serve while saving money. I have already mentioned a number of examples of collaborative efforts under other topics. To this, I will add CERT. CERT is a multi-jurisdictional, award-winning central certification collaborative, which was recognized by the National Association of Counties as an innovative program which contributes to and enhances county government in the United States, and also earned a Partnership Minnesota Public Service Award for outstanding achievement in serving our citizens. The CERT program includes certification of MWBEs, WBEs, and SBEs. CERT seeks to promote market growth, increase competitiveness, and create jobs among participating businesses. CERT exists to assist small businesses, including those owned by women and minorities. Next slide, please. In closing, the challenges we face include a dynamic political and demographic environment, economic constraints, and staff downsizing. And as envelope pushers, we ask far too much from the perspective of some and not nearly enough from the perspective of others. Our strength lies in the commitment to fairness and equity, the flexibility to adapt and work with what we've got, programmatically and resource-wise, but most importantly, relationships. Everything worthwhile is accomplished through others, both internally and externally. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, and I love the way that you ended with relationships, because I do think that's the key to everything. There's a couple of quick questions, and then we're going to launch into a larger discussion, but we're only going to have about 5 or 10 minutes for those the larger discussion questions, and we have a lot of questions already lined up. So we will cue those in and as soon as we finish with your questions, Cynthia. So the first question is from Timothy Warren. Do you still have a dollar figure cap on your small business accelerator procurement projects?
When you're saying a dollar figure, I am not certain if you mean the threshold or a ceiling. We have a $100,000 threshold for many contracts, such as construction, in which we would set small business participation subcontracting goals. Is that getting at your question?
I think he's not responding, but I think that probably is what he's talking about. If Timothy, if that's not what you're talking about, please let us know. The other question for you, Cynthia, is are there SBE goals on larger public work bid opportunities?
Yes, there are. There are SBE goals on county-funded work in our transportation department and our property services department, both on the hard construction side and also on the professional services side.
Great. Okay. And so let's now launch into a discussion with all of the panelists. And we'll have to be quick with the answers because if we want to get through a number of them. And let me start with one for everybody, if we can just make brief comments on this. How many people work in your office? How many on contract compliance and monitoring? How many on certifications? And how many providing other services to businesses such as business development and networking? Those questions are coming from Celeste Metcalf from the Missouri Office of Equal Opportunity and Carla Tucker from Baltimore County.
This is Sandy Hanks with King County. And this is an excellent question because I think all too often a number of offices such as ours, whether they're business development, contract compliance, or diversity offices of some type or social responsibility, our staffing resources are very limited. For King County, we have a staff of 4, and that total includes myself.
And this is Marcia from City of Houston. So we have our office consists of 35 staff members. We have 5 staff members that are dedicated to our airport office who handle Department of Transportation projects as well as local airport projects. They focus on goal setting and contract compliance. Then the remainder of our staff is focused on contracting regarding all city departments. And we have approximately, I think, about 13 staff members in our certification and our small business development group. We have about 6 staff members in our contract compliance team, and then the rest of the staff members are either outreach, executive level administrative support.
This is Cynthia with Hennepin County. We have approximately 3 FTEs that handle all of our work on both sides, whether it's workforce or business participation.
Allison, I don't know if you want to jump in since you're a state agency, but I do know there are other state agencies on the call.
Actually in Maryland, but from the oversight side, which is the Governor's Office of Minority Affairs, we have 8 members on the staff. They divide between legislative affairs, compliance, and outreach, and then administrative. But then our certification unit that's handling the certification is happening with the Department of Transportation through the Office of Minority Business Enterprise, and there are about, I think, about 18 staff members over in that unit to handle both certification and annual recertification for a directory of businesses that's close to 6,000 at this time.
Great, thanks a lot. The next question is from Mary Jo McKaylee, and this is for Tim Lorenz. She's from the Community College of Baltimore County. Please define disadvantaged business enterprise.
Generally, we only use the Federal Department of Transportation definition of disadvantaged business enterprise, and that's where the firm has to show both economic and social disadvantage, and the economic disadvantage includes the total receipts of the company as well as the net worth of the owner or owners. And then for the social disadvantage, that's generally race or gender, but I think there's probably been one or two firms that have been able to show social disadvantage that was not based on race or gender as well. But so I think when local governments are using this disadvantaged business enterprise definition or certification, it's for any of the federal funding that's coming through from the Department of Transportation and or the Environmental Protection Agency.
Thank you, Tim. The next question is for Sandy. It is from Olivia Mendoza from the Minority Business Office of the State of Colorado. How do you complete your gap analysis? Is that through a full disparity study or some other interim analysis?
Amy, I didn't speak to gap analysis at all.
Could this be for Marcia? Yes. I'm not sure if this is for Marcia. Okay, Marcia, sorry about that.
Okay, so we actually, we've just really started to fine-tune and embark upon this, but we do an analysis of all the participation in contracts that have been let and see where, in different types of contracts, where there has been underrepresentation of certified firms, and look closely at whether or not there are additional certifications that were needed that maybe affected participation by certified firms, and then that will inform how we address some of the gaps that we may identify.
Thanks, Marcia. This question is for you, Sandy. I'm sorry. Have there ever been any legal challenges to your program given Washington's Initiative 200, which prohibits race and gender preferences?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, shortly after Initiative 200, there was a challenge to our state Department of Transportation, Washington State Department of Transportation versus Croson. And there have been a couple of other challenges, which is why King County chose to use the larger umbrella of small business requirements, and within that, ensuring that we have diversity within our small business owners. We do work with the State Office of Minority and Women's Business Enterprises. We do have two sides of the house. We have a federal small business programs. I think Tim mentioned EPA. We also have USDOT funds as well. So, you know, we're we're the largest county government in the state. So we have a multitude of funds. We have a DBE program as well, the EPA Fair Share program. But we have taken the approach that we, in a race and gender neutral public contracting environment where we don't have the ability to set requirements any longer based on race and gender, that we would require where we can and ensure diversity within that pool. So that's the approach that we have taken. But yes, we have had court challenges here in Washington State, and it is one of the very reasons that King County has chosen to implement a fully race and gender neutral program. We're not limited, though, in terms of our outreach and what we can do to ensure that we've got minority and women-owned businesses within our pool, within our contracting.
Thank you, Sandy. And the last question is for Marcia. It's from Tracy Watson Rhodes from the Maryland Governor's Office of Minority Affairs. And we only have about 30 seconds for this, Marcia. Did Houston keep track of the utilization of WBEs once they were removed from the program? And if so, what was the impact on the program's utilization and achievement numbers?
So actually, the disparity study showed that there was actually a 50% decrease in the participation of WBEs during the period of time that they were removed from the program.
Okay, thank you, Marcia. Okay, we're going to now move on to economic impact reports. Tim Lorenz is going to be speaking from the Insight Center. He's the author of the report, and that hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at. And he's going to talk about the value of economic impact reports.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so there's many different impacts that, whether you have a minority women business enterprise program or you have a small business enterprise program, there's many ways that you can measure impacts. And so right now I'm going to be talking about economic impacts, but you also could include in an impact study things about good governance, political impacts, social impacts, and any indirect impacts on neighborhoods. So in terms of like good governance, we think that these programs increase transparency in the procurement process. And generally, when programs are not transparent, it's when people are trying to get around the system or there's not a good contracting process in place. The programs could have a political impact in terms of increasing the buy-in of small businesses and neighborhoods in the government process. They see something is working, they want to be involved in the governmental or political process. And the social impacts, it can foster social cohesion, and it can decrease the marginalization of people in business sectors. And so that can impact crime, it can impact many different education levels and so on. But in terms of the economic impact, it really means what the impact is that dollars are going to small and diverse businesses, and of course that means that contracting dollars are not going to other businesses. So the net economic impact in terms of the overall economy may be zero, but the impact on certain counties or on certain neighborhoods can be really huge. And so that's really what we're talking about economic impact, is that there's an impact going to certain businesses that are small, certain businesses that are in neighborhoods that are lower income or impacted by marginalization. So I think that's an important, it's a little bit of a tricky thing to frame when you're actually trying to present your economic impact study, because you don't want to be outright and say you're taking dollars away from larger businesses, you're taking dollars away from corporations. But in reality, that's what happens with these programs, is that it's a zero-sum game, and so that you're targeting who you want these contracts to go to, and that's where the economic impact happens. So the main thing that I think there's some certain indicators that you would want in an economic impact study. The main one stems from the contract dollars and those dollars going to small and diverse businesses. But then off of that, jobs are created. And so that's the second impact, is showing how many jobs are created by one of these programs, and then how many jobs are sustained through the program. And then there's another impact related to the tax base, and so it's a fiscal impact for whether you're a city or a county or a state. And then finally, there's an indirect impact on neighborhoods, where you could actually target where, if you have the zip code of the contractor who's either receiving the prime or the subcontract, you could see by neighborhood or by assembly district or by ward or whatever the political jurisdiction is. You could measure the impact so that individual city council people or county commissioners or state legislators could see what the impact is in their particular district of these programs. So that's really the summary of what the economic impact report would look like. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Allison Tavik, who's the Director of Communications with the Maryland Governor's Office of Minority Affairs. And Maryland is the only jurisdiction that I'm aware of that has done an economic impact report of their MWBE program. Thanks, Maryland. Allison?
Hi, thank you for inviting me to come and talk to everybody today. I am a communications professional, and therefore what we're talking about here with the economic impact data that Maryland puts out is really pushing out the good news. And that's what we see as the impact here, because what these numbers tell us is that diversity makes good economic sense. And our economic impact report validates that. And what we like about the numbers here, regardless of what they actually are, but what they do is they provide some validation. particularly for people who are not recipients of the programs, who wonder what value this kind of spend or directing spend in this way, what it means to the state. So the economic impact data that we publish for the state of Maryland, we've been doing it since 2008. We have leadership from the governor who really stresses transparency, and throughout his political career, Governor O'Malley has had a lot of focus on statistical measures. And he went out to all agencies, not just the Governor's Office of Minority Affairs, but all agencies, with the challenge that we turn the information that we capture into something that shows its impact across the state economy. So we use data that's collected from our agencies, and we collect that data both on a monthly basis, there are quarterly basis reports, and then annual reports as well. All of that data is pulled together and then fed into an in-plan system. Again, I'm a communications person. I am not an economist by any stretch of the imagination. So without the assistance of our sister agency, for us, the Department of Business and Economic Development, this data wouldn't come to us together and in this format at all. So we pull it together to report on the progress of the Minority Business Enterprise Program, both through, we collect award data and payment data. So what we're passing on is actually the payment data, and that is the source of the information used through in-plan. So next slide. What this table is just giving you is a look at how we put the data out to the public. Direct is, and this is all impact within the state of Maryland. So this is direct expenditures inside Maryland, and then the secondary impact to those expenditures. A big number for us to look at when evaluating this program is that the ability to say that for every dollar that the state of Maryland spends through MWBE Procurement, we get $1.60 of economic impact. So that's pretty powerful information. You can see from this chart the data includes wages, jobs, tax information, and just powerful data to pass on and share as we measure the program. Next slide. I've been asked by Amy to talk about what we do with this information, in addition to publishing a report that, by the way, I didn't mention, does break down to spend or to economic impact at the county level as well. But we take and produce this kind of a PR cheat sheet as well. We look at the program's performance overall, and we pull out the key measuring factors. We make sure that the economic impact data is in here. And it really serves us well in that, you know, if you're going to go to the trouble to put all this information together, and you need to make sure that you're pushing it out to the people who are then going to help spread the good news even further. So we create this so that we can hand it off to the governor and lieutenant governor, our various cabinet secretaries, who then, as they are out interacting with the business community and the community at large, are sharing this data and information so that we're all telling the same story about how valuable the MWBE program is from an economic standpoint across the state. So this I just decided to show you because it's such a very valuable tool, or has certainly proven to be very valuable for us here in Maryland, and that we were getting maybe 20 to 25 requests for information from the governor's office and lieutenant governor's office for data, and by putting it all together in this one quick handout, it meant we didn't have to keep reinventing the wheel every time somebody asked us. But more importantly, if you just follow the rules of public relations, you know, it says that when you give people information in a way they can use it, they will use it. And that's kind of what this sheet does. And we've been very successful at having counterparts across the state push out this great information about how diversity is good for the state of Maryland. So that's my quick information. Any questions?
Before we go to questions, first Tim has one more closing comment.
Yeah, we already talked about basically how to conduct an economic impact study, and we talked about the economic impacts. One thing I would emphasize there, I really think that the geographic focus, if you can look at a zip code or city council area or ward, it really helps with the elected officials so they can see the impact. How to get it done, I think Maryland is fortunate to have resources internal to their state to have research services, and so they were able to have the study done within state staff. And so I think, obviously if you have that resource available to you within your jurisdiction, that's probably the best way to get a study done. There's, Insight Center would be happy to also do a study like this, and you could talk directly with Henry Ramos, who has been on the webinar, or with myself, and we can work with you to set up the parameters of an economic impact study. Thanks, Amy.
Okay, we have time for only one question, and there are no questions specifically about economic impact reports, so we're going to go back to you, Marcia, if that's okay. This question is from Denisha Harris from the city of Greenville, North Carolina, and the question is, what is the City of Houston's relationship with business development resources, such as the community colleges?
So we actually do leverage programs that the colleges have for small business development. We advertise those for our program as well, make sure that our businesses know about them. We do collaborate at times on different initiatives. We are actually embarking upon also, in addition to making sure our businesses are competitive locally, we are exploring also connecting them to resources internationally. So we are working with a local college to actually explore that avenue for our businesses as well, how to just basically put our resources together to make sure that our businesses understand what the opportunities are globally. So we are continuously engaging with all our local partners about how to best serve our businesses.
Okay. I'm sorry, we do have time for one more question, and this is again for you, Marcia. You're popular. This is from Brian Williams from Miami-Dade Schools. What is the contract monitoring system used by Houston?
It's called B2G now. It's Business to Government Now contract monitoring system. We've had it for several years. It's actually been an integral tool for our program.
Great. Thank you, Marcia. If there's no further questions, we are going to wrap it up. Before you get off, though, I wanted to mention one thing. But first, I wanted to give you a tremendous thanks to all the panelists for your important, groundbreaking work and for sharing your wisdom with us. We really appreciate it. I wanted to mention that Insight has a strong interest in this field, and if we are to pursue more work in this space, it really should be driven by and informed by practitioners and advocates on the call. We take your feedback very seriously, and we want to know what you think about how we should move the field forward. A 1-minute survey will pop up when you close the webinar window, asking your opinion on the most important strategies. If you prefer, instead of responding to the pop-up evaluation, you could email us directly with your ideas, and on the slide is our contact information. And examples of different strategies, there's a lot of different ways that we can help move the field forward, including a 2-week university-affiliated training or a certificate program for MWBE and SBE programs, helping to form new state associations for practitioners, widely distributing a scorecard on the presence and effectiveness of programs in major cities and counties, and the like. So we'd love your ideas. I also want to thank you in advance for completing the survey. If you just wait until you close the webinar window, it should pop up right away. If there are any questions that weren't answered, we appreciate your curiosity, and our panelists have offered to respond to your questions via email. So we will send them the questions. And their contact information is also on the slide in front of you, and you can ask them questions directly. Thank you so much to the Insight team and the panelists who made this webinar possible, and thank you to the audience for your participation. Bye-bye.
Amy, great job.
Thank you. Phone.
Are we going to stay? Will we stay on this one?
Let me hang up first.
Did you close the webinar?
Hello?
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 Who's it? Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, this is Marcia.
Hey, Marcia, thank you so much. It's Henry Ramos. You were brilliant. And obviously a rock star. You had by far the most questions. So you hit the mark with your stuff, as I knew you would. Really appreciate you staying